Alright, a lot of craziness in Blazing Dominion stream with a OCG exclusive set, that being the Limited Over Collection. For the Heroes section, and of course being Heroes means Pro Tags, with remakes of the Protagonist Ace monsters, or majority of them, because some of them are just favorite heroes or one of their alternate aces. And this was definitely unexpected to me because I was never expecting them to remake the Protagonist Ace monsters this way, with a new rarity called Overframe Rare, which will be shown while I'm revealing their effects, so let's begin. So going down the pecking order from Dual Monsters of Reigns, we start off with Dark Magician, the Pharaoh's Servant. Just like the original, level 7 Dark Spellcaster with 2500 attack, 2100 defense, with each effect being a hard once per turn. The first one being a continuous, that it becomes Dark Magician while it's on the field and graveyard, which is of course important for the Dark Magician deck, with the second effect of course being a hard once per turn. You can reveal one spell from hand to special summon this card from your hand, then set one Dark Magician themed spell or trap from your deck. Damn, a Dark Magician that could special summon itself and set you a card, which is of course pretty good because you're summoning a big beater that also counts itself as Dark Magician for the deck and also lets you search for a key piece. With the third effect being a hard once per turn quick effect, you can discard one spell and destroy all spells and traps your opponent controls. This being a quick effect can actually be very annoying, especially since this is a Harpy's Feather Duster as a quick effect. Now the only thing is it is restricted to only using with spells, but for this format you're going to be using a bunch of spells anyway, especially for a spellcaster deck. And besides, this is a Dark Magician with an actual effect that is actually kind of generic as well, so definitely play this in your Dark Magician themed deck, or even a Attempt themed deck, not Yu-Gi-Moto. Next up to favorite hero Shining Flare Wingman, which is kind of funny to me because this is the favorite hero and not the main ace, but in a way it still works, but it's just also kind of weird to me since this is the evolved form of it. But anyway, it's a level 8 light warrior with 2500 attack, 2100 defense, that is also a fusion monster, and it requires a fusion monster along with one face up monster on the field, meaning that you could technically summon this with Super Poly. It is also treated as an elemental hero card, and the first effect is a hard once per turn. If this card is special summoned from the extra deck, you can shuffle 5 monsters from your graveyard back to the deck and then draw 2 cards. And then this card gets 1000 attack, with the second effect being shared like the original. When this card destroys a monster by battle, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the original attack of the destroyed monster. Kinda find it funny that you don't even need elemental heroes to summon this card, despite technically being an elemental hero. It's a Pot of Avarice on summon, which could be good or bad depending on scenario, but being able to recycle your stuff from the graveyard is always pretty nice, especially being a 35k beater that can also have the Flaming Wingman effect still. Overall, it's a pretty good card. I'm just a little surprised that it's actually quite generic and not restricted to elemental heroes. And then we go to Stardust Dragon Victim Sanctuary, which is the effect name. Just like the original, level 8 dragon that is also wind with 2500 attack, 2000 defense, and of course being a synchro that has generic summoning condition, with its 2 effects being hard once per turn and can't be activated on the same chain. With the first one being when your opponent activates a card or effect in response to your activated effects, quick effect, you can tribute this card to negate that effect and destroy that card. With the second effect kinda linked to the first effect, where if a monster was tributed this turn, quick effect, you can banish this card from the graveyard to special summon one Stardust monster from your extra deck that is a synchro monster. Unfortunately, this is not treated as a synchro summon. So in a way, it's a more restricted version of Stardust Dragon because this one is response to one of your opponent's activated effects to your own effect, because the original one only responds to destruction. This one is more so that you play something and then your opponent plays something on you. But not only that, unlike the original, this one doesn't bring itself back. Although it does say any Stardust synchro monster, which you do have stuff like Stardust Warrior or even Excel Synchro Stardust Drag. In a way, I just wish this was not as restricted, but I do kind of like the part where you could summon any Stardust Synchro monster. And then we go to number 39, Utopia Envoy of Light, which if I remember correctly, that's supposed to be a title given to Utopia. And once again, just like the original, rank 4 light warrior with 2500 attack, 2000 defense, requires 2 level 4 monsters, and this one actually follows the anime part where it cannot be destroyed by battle by anything other than by numbers. With the second effect being a quick effect where you can detach one material from this card, then target one monster on the field. The first time that monster will be destroyed, it is not destroyed. And keep in mind this is not once per turn and it can also target itself. It's just too bad you can't target it twice since it's the first time it cannot be destroyed. But the third effect, which is kind of linked to Double or Nothing, so it's another anime reference, although not really at the same time, because when the second attack is declared during this turn, you can make this card get 2500 extra attack and gain this effect. When this card destroys the monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can special summon to your field, which you can also attack your opponent with it as well. This is actually a pretty good improvement to the original Utopia, as of course that one only negates an attack, although not once per turn on preventing destruction. Although while the original one has no materials, it could be destroyed by anything that attacks into it, which does kinda suck. Although this one doesn't count as the original, so if you are playing a Utopia deck, you might still need it. But this is an overall huge improvement to the original because not only that it could still protect itself at least one time per turn, it could also be a huge beat stick that can give you even more monsters and destruction. Not like the protection really matters too much considering that it's protected by anything non-numbers when it comes to battle. And then we go to Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, the Heavenly 4 Dragon. Once again, just like the original, level 7 Dark Dragon with 2700 attack, 2000 defense, pendulum scale 4, with a hard once per turn pendulum effect where during the main phase you can destroy this card to search your deck for one pendulum monster with 1500 attack or less. And of course add it to your hand, but you cannot activate effects for the rest of the turn unless you perform a pendulum summon, which is technically fine because the search is always pretty nice, especially for pendulum related decks. Which to the monster effect is that this pendulum summon card gets these effects. Gets attack equals to the difference between the pendulum scales times 300, so basically if your scales are 5 scales apart, it's going to get 1500 attack, along with any battle damage that your opponent takes from this card is double. So already it's basically a more restricted version to the original, but also better than the original because the original one only has the double damage part, but this one has additional effect where it gets extra attack. But not only that, it has one last effect, which is hard once per turn. If this card is destroyed in the monster zone, you can add it to your hand, and then if it was destroyed by your opponent, you can special summon it. Having high attack, it's very likely to be destroyed by your opponent card effect, and it's nice that you can still have the 25k beater, but it's also nice that you can technically get another scale in your hand that can let you search if you need to, or just rependulum summon it for the next turn. Of course, once again, since it's a remake, it's usually better than the original since it has some extra effects, although in this case it's a little more restricted. And finally to our last pro tag, Decode Talker Integration. Once again, Firewall Dragon getting shadow banned just because it was banned once before in real life, which also in turn could not be used as advertisement in the anime. Just like the original, Dark Cybers with 2300 attack, and same arrows, up, bottom right, bottom left, and it's also Link 3, summoning condition, at least 2 effect monsters, with the first effect being, while in the extra monster zone, this card gets 500 attack for every Link monster on the field and graveyard. That does not include itself, and also cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects, which is actually pretty nice since it's big beater with some protection, although it's unfortunate it has to be on the extra monster zone for this effect compared to the original, where it could be anywhere, and it's not restricted to Link monsters. Although arguably, for the original, if it's on the main monster zone, only pointing at the extra monster zone will get some extra attack, so it wouldn't matter too much. But already, when it comes to big beater in comparison to the original, it's definitely better, especially since it has some added protection on top of it. But the second effect is more probably related to extend, because hard once per turn quick effect, you can tribute one monster that this card points to, send one Cyberse monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, which could also set up for Dark Fluid and Singularity, and then this card can make up to 2 attacks on monsters this battle phase this turn. In a way, it's a stronger beater of the original, since technically it's a combination of the original along with extend, and it also sets up the graveyard for your basically bigger boss monsters, along with some extra protection. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the negate effect like the original, and also this doesn't count as original Decode Talker, so that does say few things, but overall it is better than the original just because of how much it can do. And so that's it for the new Pro Tag monsters when it comes to Limit Over Collection, the heroes. What do you guys think of it? Honestly, these were a huge surprise to me because I was not expecting full-on remakes of Protagonist Aces, or even in some cases alternate aces or favorite cards. But at least that they are related closely to the protagonist, unlike a certain other group for another set, especially when it comes to certain cards that probably should have got the retrain in the first place. In a way, it does actually kind of remind me on what Vanguard did with the reboot when it comes to V-Series and Encounter cards, and I really hope they make more of these in the future. Just kinda wish that they did Neos along with Firewall Dragon instead of their basically alternate aces. Because I swear, it just feels kinda weird that it's their alternate aces and not their main aces, unless if they're gonna make another one of these where they're gonna kinda flip it around. But on that, that's it for this, and see you all next time.